Got the Wheel of Death right now.
Oh, God.
Oh, there we go. Should be popping up here.
Yep.
Is it on?
Yep, I see you.
Fantastic. Hello. Great. It was easy today, thank goodness.
Oh, don't jinx us.
I know. Just when we think things are going easily. Yeah. But, hey, Linda.
Hola.
Hola.
Hi, Marlo.
Oh, hey, Marlo.
That's my Canadian girl.
I watched some of her live. Was it yesterday? I don't even remember what day it was that she does her little like happy hour. Was it yesterday? I don't know what day it was. But yeah. I watched this week's Marlo and part of last week's.
Isn't she awesome?
She is. She is. It was entertaining last week with Charlie.
We should interview her.
Oh yeah, that would be cool. Hey everyone. Oh wow, I forgot to scroll and you can see more.
She said yes.
Okay. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know what day it is, let alone like what day. Yeah. What day things happen at. Hey Jess, Annie, hey Michael. Thank you guys for joining. Hey Alan. Hope you guys are doing well. It is Wednesday. I definitely know what today is just. Hey guys. I got a few minutes and then we'll get started. Thank you guys so much for jumping on and joining us today. Got some great coverage, options and formulas for you guys today. All right. Definitely got some people jumping on. Hey, Tammy.
You still have a couple more minutes, too.
I know. This is great. Hopefully you guys are doing well out there, staying busy, staying positive, counting down the days still, which is what I'm doing. Morning. I forget it's still morning in the West Coast, I guess. And other places in the hey, from the UK. Hello, Elaine. I think I saw last week, and I can't remember who it was, but I think I saw somebody post that they jump on. It's like 3 a.m. their time when we do this. Yeah. And they've been jumping on. So thank you guys from all over the world for your dedication to joining at our 1 p.m. Time slot on the East Coast.
And I believe that our friend it gets up at 3 a.m. is from South Africa.
Oh, nice.
I believe. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know the time, like the time zones well enough to do the math on where that would be. But yeah, 3 a.m. though, like good for you. Hey, Karen, Paige, Christina. Hey. I've noticed that the UK, they've been doing some of their own lives and some of their own like studio sessions too over there. It's been great to see what the different countries with Keune are putting out. Hey, Corey. Hope you and the girls are doing well. I'm sure they're keeping you super busy during quarantine. We've got about 1 more minute, guys, and we'll get started. Hey, Crystal. And feel free, guys, as we're waiting, if you have ideas for future programs, to put it in the comments. We are going to keep doing this, so keep the ideas coming. We've got some programs for you next week already lined up as well. So, yeah, keep the ideas coming in.
And you're a go, doll.
Oh, perfect. Is it 1 o'clock already? Great.
It is. It is.
That 5 minutes goes by so fast when you jump on here. Just getting to say hello, everyone. But thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you for being here and spending your hour with us. If you haven't been here before, welcome. This is our Keune Academy Live, where we get to bring education and information to you, whether you're back in the salons or are at home now. And it's been such a blessing to just connect with you guys weekly. I know for Jessica and I, second time this week. So thank you guys so much. And hopefully we saw you on Monday. If not, you can go back and rewatch all of our videos. They're saved both on the Keune Professionals page, and you'll find a lot of great information and videos on our Keune North America YouTube channel as well. So it's another great resource for you to go and find Keune information is on our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for keeping your ideas coming. Hopefully we're keeping you motivated and inspired now while you're out of the salon. And if you are back in the salon, congratulations. Hopefully things are going well. I love seeing every day the posts about like things being successful behind the chair and things running smoothly. So it gives the rest of us that are still waiting hope. So thank you guys for taking the time. We're gonna talk about gray coverage today. We're gonna talk about techniques. We're gonna talk about formulations, troubleshooting, things that you can do within your formulas now to make your gray coverage even better, and some other options for what if your client's not looking for coverage, what if they're looking for more of a blending. So we're going to talk about all things gray today. I've got Jessica Mills on the phone with me. She's going to be helping relay any questions that you guys have or comments that you have, because I know that I'm sure most of you are sitting home right now thinking about that one client that either is you're racking your brain to try and figure out what the formula should be or where am I going wrong. I know for me, I always had that one client where I would try and tweak the formula the best I could, but it still wasn't perfect. So hopefully by the end of today, we can give you some troubleshooting advice, and maybe it's an application or formulation, things to really improve that end result. So think about that client as we're going through this. Feel free if you want to put her name, his or her name in the comments just to get it out there, and let that client know that you're thinking about them and that you got some ideas for their gray coverage when you get back into the salon. So where I always like to start, whether it's a haircut client or a color client, is always with the consultation and making sure that we're having that thorough consultation with our guest. Because at the end of the day, like we may be striving for coverage and they might just be looking for a blend or a coloring of their gray. So always finding out what their expectation is with their visit with you that day. So having, again, the conversation, are you looking to cover your gray hair, color your gray hair, or blend it? So we've got options for each of those categories so that your guests can leave with their idea of like gray blending or coverage is. So always ask them what their expectations are. The second thing is if it's a client that you already have and you've been coloring their hair for a long time, have the open conversation with them. Is what you're doing satisfactory to them? So is it lasting as long as what they want it to last? Are they experiencing any fading over the course of the week? And are they using products at home that are going to help maintain what you're doing in the salon? So are they using salon professional shampoos and conditioners, styling products? All of those things are definitely going to help the longevity of the color. For those of you that have used Keune before with your gray coverage, you know once it's covered in the salon, it stays that way until they come back in, which is one of the things that I love most about Keune. That once it's covered until it grows back out again. If you're experiencing that you can still see some grays, then we need to tweak that formula a little bit to get that 100% coverage. And we're going to talk about ways to do that today. So the one thing that I think is going to also benefit us right now while we're in quarantine and our guests are at home, they're going to get to a chance to experience what their gray hair actually looks like. And at this point, they probably have a couple weeks of grow out. What I foresee happening is clients are going to want it lighter. So I know one thing that I always ran into in the salon is if I had a client for a long period of time, in the beginning when they had more natural, they were okay with their hair color being darker. But as they started to gray more and more, that darker hair color was such a contrast against their gray that they wanted to start going lighter to blend it more. So what we've done by having our clients sit at home is kind of set us up for success. Their colors probably faded out some. They probably got more grow out than usual. So now we have the opportunity to start going lighter if that's something that they're interested in. So maybe we tweak our formulas to work on the lighter side and pop in a few highlights to blend that gray as it grows out as well. So it gives our clients a little bit more of a transition into a lighter shade of that all over color. So again, that's going to help set us up for success. One of the other things I always like to add into the consultation are they using any products at home in between their color services to blend their gray or hide their gray until they can get back in to see you. So that includes like the powders, the waxes, the sprays, the mascaras. I mean, there's so many different application tools for that temporary color these days, and sometimes they're not getting it from us so that we know what they're using. So I always think it's important to have that conversation with them so that we can set ourselves up for success, because some of those products contain like a waxy residue that even though the tint has been removed from the hair, the residue might not be. So, and if that's the case, we really need to set ourselves up with a Clarify shampoo ahead of time to remove any of those impurities from the hair. So I love using our Care Clarify shampoo. Again, it's a great, if you will, detox shampoo or clarifying shampoo that's back bar only. So it's just for us to use in the salon, but it'll pull out any residue on the hair, whether it's product buildup, tint buildup, whether it's mineral buildup from water. Again, our clients have been home and shampooing, and maybe they have well water or pipes that haven't been updated. So a lot of those minerals in their water can also affect our hair color. So sometimes we're doing everything right in our formulations, and there's outside influences that are affecting the end result and maybe not giving us the great coverage that we should be expecting. So starting every color service with a Clarify shampoo is never a bad idea, especially with our gray-haired guests. So I would definitely include a Clarify shampoo into the service. Now, I know what you're thinking, Amber, that's going to take more time. That means I'm going to have to clarify the hair, means I'm going to have to dry the hair. Do I have time for that? The way I always look at it is it takes 5 extra minutes to clarify. It's going to take me 30 minutes to let it process if I have to redo it again. So that 5 extra minutes is way faster than having to redo the hair and let it process for another 30. So I always opt for the Clarify. And again, if you clarify the hair first, Tint of Color is meant for dry hair, but you can apply it to damp hair. And I'm not talking about sopping wet hair or dripping wet hair, but it can be applied to damp hair. So clarify, towel dry really well, and then apply your Tint of Color formula on that damp hair. And if the hair is resistant, you might find that you get better coverage on damp hair than on dry hair. So that's kind of the first tip and trick, is if you take a damp sponge and a dry sponge and put them both into water, the damp sponge will absorb more water than the dry sponge. Moisture attracts moisture. So if the hair is damp and I'm applying color, the hair is going to absorb that hair color faster on damp hair than on dry hair. So tip number 1 for resistant gray hair, try applying it on damp and you might get better coverage that way. So no, that was a lot. Jess, do we have any questions or anything so far?
Not yet.
Not yet? Perfect. So it's a little bit about the consultation. Again, that kind of helps set us up for success. One of the biggest things, like I said, that I've run into is that those outside products like the powders and stuff like that just preventing the color from doing its job. So making sure that we set ourselves up for success and removing anything that could be in the way is tip number 1. So after we've gone through the consultation, kind of gathered all of our information that we need, now we can get into actually evaluating the hair and diagnosing what we're actually working on so that we can come up with that formula. So to do that, I've got our lovely guest here today, and she's gonna help us talk about some great coverage formulations and actually diagnosing the amount of gray. And for whatever reason, I always had a challenge when I first started doing hair, and kind of still do, like I'll admit it. I always feel like I'm guessing at the amount of gray hair that they have on their head. There's a lot of things that can play into it, the illusion of dark hair next to it, or maybe they're lighter and it's blonde, so things look lighter. So what helps me is when I look at gray hair, I always ask myself, do I see more gray or do I see more natural? So I start there. Do I see more gray or do I see more natural? And when we say gray, keep in mind that it's not just gray, but you have gray, you have silver, you have white. So all of that kind of lumps into that same basket of like gray hair. So silvers, grays, white. They all are lacking pigment, so they kind of get all lumped into the same basket. So when I look at this hair, and I've got the bottom of it colored, so I'm going to cover it up for now. But when I look at this hair, I have to ask myself, do I see more gray or do I see more natural? And for me, I definitely see more gray. And I know it's kind of hard to tell on here, but she's got varying levels of white and silver hair and very little natural throughout. So even those darker pieces you see are still in that gray family. This is actually the little bit of natural that you see through here. And again, I know it's probably hard on camera, but I see more gray, I see more silver. So immediately I know that they're more than 50% gray because I see more of it. Now I have to ask myself is how much natural do I see? And for me, like getting in and like really like sectioning it out, I only see really about 25% natural in there. So I know that she's somewhere between 50 and probably 75% gray. Now, the great thing about like Keune formulations, if they segment it out into bigger categories. So if we misdiagnose, we're still kind of protected in our formulation. So Keune recommends up to 30% gray formulas, up to 60% gray formulas, and then up to 100. So we really have 3 different categories. So again, if I misdiagnose, as long as it's between the 60 and 100, I'm safe, and I like that. Because when I first started formulating, I'd always go to the most coverage because I was afraid that it wasn't going to cover. So I was formulating everybody to up to 100 just as a safety net. And then after learning and after trusting like the product and like the diagnosis, I started backing off, and my formulas and my naturals actually came out more predictable to what I wanted for the end result. So we're going to put her in like a 70, 75% gray category. So that's what we're going to formulate her. That's what we're going to put her formula into when we get to the formulation part. One other thing is actually diagnosing the density of the hair. So what's the texture? That's going to play into our end results with gray coverage as well, because whether they're fine, medium, or coarse, we have to treat that differently as far as our developers and sometimes our timing. So the easiest way to be able to tell like the density of the hair is to grab a single hair strand. And if you can feel that hair in between your fingers, know that it's probably a coarse hair. So one single hair between your fingers, or if they've lost a hair, you can lay it on a table. If you can see it, it's probably coarse. If you can hold that hair between your fingers and you don't really feel it there, or you lay it on a table and you can't really see it, it's fine. So the diameter of it is so small that you can't see it or feel it. So the difference is on fine hair, not only is it more susceptible to damage because it doesn't have as much protection around it, it's easier to manipulate with our color. So if you think about it, fine hair lightens faster, color is easier, but I have to worry about it being damaged easier as well. Where coarse hair, it has more protection to it, which is why it's so resilient in lightening and in coloring. The hard part is because it has more protection, it's harder to get through, which is why we have such a hard time with gray coverage on our coarse hair, is because I have to fight through all those protections or cuticle layers to really get down into the hair to penetrate and deposit tone. So sometimes it's adjusting your timing or your developer to be able to get through that hair, the time frame that Keune recommends to get your deposit of tone and your 100% gray coverage. So we have to diagnose the percentage of gray, the texture of the hair, and we also have to figure out if it's not 100% gray, what's the other, what's the natural level that's also contributing to the end result? And I feel like as hairstylists, that's the part that we always forget about. We're so focused on covering the gray that I forget that there's also 25% of a natural level in there that's going to contribute to the end result. So I have to take into consideration, if this is her natural level mixed throughout this, if I put a color on the gray, how is it going to affect her natural? So you have to diagnose the gray, the texture, and the natural level before coming up with your formulation. And I think the hardest part is that it doesn't look like this all over the head, right? So you have areas in the front that are usually 100% gray. In through here, it's usually a mix of 50-50. And then possibly in the back, it could be a mix of like 75% natural and 25% gray. And we try and use one bowl over the entire head to blend it. And clients are like, why is it always warm? I'm not getting great coverage here. This is always super warm. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. Like, I will never forget my one client. It was always like orange in the back. This is when I first started, and was great and covered here. And I'm like, just don't pull your hair up until I figure out how to fix this. And what I really needed to do was create 2 different custom formulas, because it was like working on 2 different heads of hair. So we really have to break down those segments and color it accordingly to the percentage of gray that we're working on. So that was one thing that an old boss of mine, she called it paint by number. And she's like, wherever you see a 1, you guys know what paint by number, so number 1's this color, choose this color. If it was 100% gray, I would use this bowl. So it was my first bowl. If it was this percentage of gray, I would use this bowl. So as I was going through, I had different options in my bowl to give me 100% gray coverage when there's no natural. But then on the areas where there's natural, I could lift the natural and cover the gray at the same time. So sometimes it's just a matter of grabbing an extra bowl of color to be able to get the same end result on 2 different percentages of gray.
Mm-hmm. And Amber, would your application be different based on the texture?
Great question. Would my application be different based on the texture? It definitely could be. When working with gray hair, I always like to keep my sections thin anyway and work in about 1/4 inch sections. I definitely recommend that for resistant or coarse hair. On finer hair, you can definitely take bigger sections. So application-wise, for sure, my section size would change, even though my application, and we're gonna go through a top and bottom application when applying for gray hair, but my section size would definitely change depending on the texture. It's a great question. Awesome. Is there anything else right now, Jess?
No.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So we'll go through at the end again, like different formulations for whether they have different percentages of gray. I do get the question a lot, if I'm using multiple bowls, do I charge more? And the answer is no. And the reason being is if I'm using, say, 30 grams of color throughout the whole head, if I have to divide 15 grams into one bowl and 15 grams into another bowl, it's still coming out to the same amount of product at the end of it. So this is one of the ways that I like to talk about customizing color for my clients, so that they know, so I know they don't go anywhere, but at the same time, it's not costing me extra product to do it. So just wanted to throw that out there, but paint by number is the way to go. All right, so Keune gives us breakdowns, like I said, for up to 30, up to 60, and up to 90%. So we're gonna get back to our dolly for today in just a minute. I wanna walk you guys through what those formulas look like so that we know what we're working within the right percentage of gray for what we're using. So I've got it broken down to 2 different segments, because really I don't always feel like clients are looking to cover gray, especially in the beginning stages. So up to 30% gray, we have a few different options. So to blend gray hair, you could always reach for our semi-color. And for those of you that are here and new to Keune or haven't used Keune before, let's see if I can get it and not in the light. Semi-color is our demi-permanent color. So it mixes with activator, and it lasts in the hair for 4 to 6 weeks before naturally releasing from the hair. So naturally releasing means it's not gonna leave a line demarcation. So it's great for these up to 30%ers that just want to blend their gray and not have a commitment to it yet. So this is where I usually start with them. And semi-color will blend up to 70% gray. So it'll blend up to 70% gray, making it great again for that initial color service for a client that's just starting out and doesn't really know where to go yet. Our next option is we have a few high lift blonde shades that will also blend gray hair. And the reason that high lift blonde shades are important is because if I only have 30% gray, I have 70% of something else, meaning it's a natural 7, 6, whatever it is. But I have 70% of a natural level that's contributing to the end result. So if that client wants to be blonde, I almost need something in a high lift category to get me there, and it'll also blend my gray. So those options are in our special blonde series and in our super ash blonde series. We have our 1032, which is a beige blonde, and we also have our 1038. So our 32 is a golden pearl, and our 38, there you go, you can see it better that way, is a gold brown. These both give you 3 to 4 levels of lift on natural hair. They can be used with 30 or 40 volume, and 1032 will blend up to 50% gray, and 1038 will blend up to 90% gray. So I get the lift of the natural that I'm looking for and the blending of that 30% gray. So those two are great options. You can use those all over the head, like on scalp or in foils. If I'm looking for something that lifts slightly more, my Super Ash Blonde 1531 will lift 4 to 5 levels on natural hair. It has a gold and ash tonality. And again, it'll lift the natural and then deposit onto that gray hair and blend it. So it's a great option for like lighter hair guests to get a lift and blend of that gray. So you've got some blending options.
What developer would you recommend those, Amber?
Great question. With our 1000 series, I would use 30 or 40 volume is recommended. And then our 1500 series, 30 or 40 also. But I want to point out that the 1500 series is a 1-to mixing ratio. So 1 part of your 1500 series to 2 parts of either 30 or 40 volume. Great question. Was there anything else at that point?
No.
All right, cool. So if blending is not what they're after and they're looking for more coverage or cover, you'll want to go to Tint of Color, which is our permanent line. And the formulation that Keune suggests is a 3 parts fashion shade to 1 part of our natural. So I know this is in a big increment, but it's easier to talk about with a full tube amount of 60 grams. So let's just say that my client wants to be a 5.35. So a level 5 gold mahogany. That's what she wants the outcome to be. If she has up to 30% gray, I have to add natural into the equation. That's going to ensure that I get that coverage and that I get that deposit of tone. So my formula would be 45 grams of my fashion shade, which in this case would be 5.35. And then 15 grams of my natural. And in this case, since I'm working at a level 5, I'm going to use a 5 natural. That's a 5. I couldn't really tell the top one. Okay. So 5.35, 45 grams, and then 15 grams of a level 5. So I would use that with, at this point, 10 volume or 20 volume. Keune recommends 20 volume for gray coverage, but because you're working at almost 70% natural and only 30% gray, I have to keep in mind the natural that's there. So if I use 10 volume, I'm going to get tone on tone, still coverage of gray, but I'm not going to lift the natural and expose as much underlying pigment or warmth. So I'm going to stick with either 10 volume on fine hair or hair that I, again, just want tone on tone. If I'm dealing with coarse or medium to coarse textured hair, I would probably go to 20 volume because it's going to give me more coverage on that coarse hair. So your developer may change at this stage. when you're dealing with gray coverage with up to 30% gray. So.
And Amber, would you use 5.00 UC or just 5?
That's a great question. Would I use 5.00 UC or just a natural 5? It depends on the texture of hair, but at this stage, the 5 natural is usually fine unless it's very coarse, resistant gray hair. So the UC shades, and I'm actually going to talk about those next if you want to stay tuned. I'll give you a little bit more information on that, but in this case, I would stick with 5 natural. So hopefully that answers the question until I get into the UC series. Cool, okay. So for up to 30% gray, you have your blending suggestions and then your coverage. Now, I always like to think of this as like a progression. So if I think about the same client that I've had for years, usually that client continues to gray over time. So I have to evolve that formula with the client and with the graying process. So meaning I'm not going to use this formula for our whole time together. Usually they're going to get more gray, which means that I have to transition it into an up to 60% gray amount. I still have the options for blending with semi-color or our high lift options. I can still use semi-color to blend and our 1032, 1038, and 1531 to blend. But if you notice, when we get down to covering gray hair at up to 60%, I have to add in more natural. So always keep in mind, more gray, I have to add in more natural. So I can still get the end result that my client's been loving. I just have to tweak what I'm doing behind the scenes to get her there. So my fashion shade, her end result is still 5.35. But now I'm just doing 40 grams of it. I'll have to add 20 grams of my natural 5 to get the coverage that I'm looking for. So less fashion, more natural at up to 60% gray. We good so far, Jess?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, perfect. All right, and then the last option is up to 100% gray. Like I said, when I first started doing hair, I feel like I just formulated everyone for up to 100%, just because it was a safety net. And I was like, I don't want my client coming back in, and I don't want to take her to the shampoo bowl and not see it. And that's just part of the reason, like, I just didn't trust the product completely yet because I was brand new to it and I was still learning it. So for me, I'm like, I'm just going for the gusto and going for the 100% gray. So at up to 100% gray, remember that semi-color will blend up to 70%. So I still can use semi-color as an option. My high lift options, I can use my 1038 and my 1531. So those two, again, will blend up to 90%. So I still have those as an option as well. When I get into wanting it covered, this is usually what we're striving for at that from 60 to 100% gray is actually covering that gray hair. I need equal parts of my fashion shade to equal parts of my natural shade. So again, we're using 5, 3, 5, and 5. At this point, this is where you could introduce the UC shades naturals in place of the regular naturals in Tinta. So I could use a UC natural or just a Tinta natural. And here's the difference. So my regular naturals, they're going to be found in the first column in our swatch book. Usually the naturals are enough for 100% gray coverage. If you're dealing with resistant gray hair and it's coarse and the texture of it is definitely like bouncing off the head because they have so many cuticle layers, sometimes we need something a little bit stronger for those clients. And that's when you'll look to, you can see the purple box in the top corner. That's when we'll look to our ultimate cover shades. And the ultimate cover shades, again, are meant for resistant gray hair. They have more warmth, they have more alkalinity, and they also have more pigment in them. And that's usually the 3 things that gray hair and a resistant gray hair is missing is warmth, alkalinity, and pigment. So they come in both natural and fashion shades. And if you look down at the box in the swatch book, you'll see that those boxes are purple. So anywhere in the swatch book where you find a purple box in the top right-hand corner, know that that's meant for resistant gray hair. Now, the cool thing that Keune's done is that box is in the swatch book purple, but it's also purple on the box and the tube. So if you're learning Keune and you haven't been using it for a long time, when you go back into your dispensary to try and figure out what shade you're going to use, if you know you're working on resistant gray hair, keep an eye out for the purple boxes. They kind of lead you to the solution, if you will. So love that they color coded them. It makes our life a whole lot easier. So if it's not resistant hair, stick with the natural. If it is resistant, go with the Ultimate Cover series.
So Amber, do you always recommend mixing it with a fashion shade, or can you just use an Ultimate Cover shade on its own?
That's a great question. Do I always have to use a fashion shade, or can I use an Ultimate Cover by itself? You can use an Ultimate Cover by itself whenever you would like to. So know every time that you pick this box off the shelf, it can cover resistant gray hair alone. The only reason that we have it mixed in with a fashion shade is because there's not as many Tint of fashion shades as what there are Ultimate Cover fashion shades. So sometimes we have to convert our regular fashion shades into Ultimate Cover shades by adding an Ultimate Cover natural into it. Did that answer the question?
Awesome.
Cool. Okay, so over 50% gray, resistant gray, Ultimate Cover can be inserted into the equation for gray coverage. Everything that we just went through on gray coverage can be found on the back of your swatch book on the top. So this is going to be your quick reference guide for Tint of Color when covering gray. So you'll find all the information that we just went through for 30%, 60%, and 100%. The formulations are right next to it as to how much you would use. So when you guys get back into the salons, you're like, I don't remember what she said. Know that it's right on the top of the swatch book for you. So if I'm using equal parts natural and equal parts fashion shade, would you guys agree that the natural is going to kind of dilute down my strength or my impact of my fashion shade? If I'm adding equal parts of a natural and a fashion, the natural is going to mute it some. So I almost have to buy that back by adding in our mixed colors. And our mixed colors, if you've never played with them, they're amazing. They let you be creative, but they also are there when you need them to help your end result. So these are our mixed colors. Sorry guys, everything's backwards. I haven't gotten used to it yet. But these are our mixed colors in the bottom right-hand corner. All of these can be added into your Tinta shades. The reason that I like using them for gray coverage is because, again, when I add that natural in, I kind of weaken the impact that my 535 in this example has. So I could add 0/33 and or 0/55 into the formula to kind of buy back some of that tonality that I've lost by adding in natural. This is going to help give you a truer match to the swatch book, which that's our 535. So it'll help give you a truer match to the swatch book if I add in mixed colors. If you've been using Keune for a while and you've been using this formula and not adding in mixed colors, you've probably been fine. You probably haven't noticed much of a difference. But if you're looking to be exact to the swatch book, you'll want to add it in. Let's see. I thought I saw a question come up, but I'll wait.
Yeah, I'm trying to read it too.
Okay. I'll run through this. Maybe it'll answer it, but that way it'll give you a chance to read that question too.
Okay.
Mixed colors there's a chart on the back of the book, so it goes according to this chart. So you'll notice our color wheel, and then to the left of that, you'll see a mixed color chart. That chart tells you how much mixed color you would add in to get about a 20% change in your tonality. So since I'm working on a level 5 now, what I'll do is find my level 5 on the left-hand column. You can see right there's a level 5, and then I'll follow that over, and that's gonna tell me how much mixed color to use for a full tube amount, which is 60 grams, which is what we're working with in this formula. So I would have to add in 12 centimeters or 4.8 inches into my formula to kind of buy back some of that gold and mahogany tonality. And I can measure that out by using the bottom of the bowls. So this is one of our Tint of Color bowls, and they come in both circle and oblong, and they both have the little measuring system at the bottom of it. So most of us are like, I don't even know how big a centimeter is. I'm one of those people. Inches are a little bit easier since we cut mostly in inches. But this way, when the lines are vertical, in between those lines, that's a centimeter. So if I need 12 of them, I have to go across and then across again until I hit 12 centimeters. If you want to measure it in inches, you'll turn the bowl this way, and across is an inch. So anytime you use our mixed colors, add those in first, if you remember, and if you can, add them in first so you can measure them across the bottom. And then when you add your rest of your formula, no extra developer is needed for your mixed colors. What was the question that we had, Jess?
Okay, so one of the issues I have run into is when you have resistant gray, 80% gray,
okay,
is that it turns warm with 20 volume and also is lighter than the rest of the hair. Would this be where you would lower volume developer and use the paint by numbers technique, and also maybe a darker shade at the root?
Great question. I don't know that I can recap the whole thing, but the answer would be yes. So if you're experiencing a warmer result than what you want, lower your developer. So keep in mind, developer does two things. It controls your timing, and it controls how much underlying pigment is exposed. So it's really what your developer's function is to make your product work and then tell you how fast it works and then how much underlying pigment is exposed. So if I'm using a 20 volume, I'm gonna expose more underlying pigment. So if there's natural there, that underlying pigment is gonna show through, impacting my end result, which is warm. So if you lower your developer, there's a better chance of you getting more of like a shade that you're picking out of the swatch book without that extra warmth being added. And then the second part of that was with the paint by number, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, paint by number would be a great one for that, because again, if it's not consistently gray throughout the whole head, I'm trying to use one formula to tackle two different things. So on the darker hair, the more natural hair, I might pick a fashion shade that has a neutralizing tone of 0.1 or 0.9 to neutralize that warmth. But obviously I wouldn't want to put that same formula on the predominantly gray hair, because then it's going to grab deeper and darker and more muted. So hopefully that answers the question. Thank you. Okay.
I have another one.
Okay.
How much do you measure of each mixed color if there are two?
That's a great question. So how much mixed color do I add if there's two? You can be super mathematic about it, or you can just add more of one than the other. So for instance, a 5.35, your primary tonality, which is going to be gold, is going to have more influence over the end result than the mahogany. So if I took that 12, I think it was 12 centimeters, I could break it down to like what's 30% or what's 70% of that, and then leave the rest to the secondary tonality. Or I can just add more of one than the other, which is usually what I do. If there's one number after the decimal point, super easy. You just add the full amount of this. If there's two numbers after the decimal point, you'll want to break it down, primary tonality being more of that mixed color, and then secondary tonality being less.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, Amber, that if you added more of the 0/55, that the color could be a little darker though?
That's a great question. If I added more the 0/5, could the color be darker? Maybe yes and maybe no, and here's the reason why. So a lot of times if we're dealing with gray hair and it's resistant gray hair, that gray hair will absorb the warmth. So there's a lot of times where I feel like we pick mahoganies on gray hair and then you rinse it and blow dry it and you're like, oh, it's not as warm as what I thought. The reason is that hair absorbed the warmth and then leaves you with what's left of it. So if it's resistant gray hair, the extra mahogany would not make it look darker. If it's not resistant gray hair, it could look deeper just because mahogany is made up of the red and the violet. So it definitely could add some depth to your end result. But in some cases, it could also assist you in your end result.
Sure. And for resistant hair, would you use 30 volume?
Awesome question. So for resistant hair, could I use 30 volume? And the answer is yes. And there's different techniques that you can do for resistant gray hair that we're going to talk about in just a minute. And it's called our shifting technique that actually calls for 30 volume to keep the color true to its original end result, which is actually translucent. So if you're new to Keune or have been using Keune for a while, one of the things that I love about it is it's a translucent color line, meaning that it's not flat, it's not monochromatic. I get some depth, I get dimension with it. It still covers my gray, but it allows light to reflect off of it. So think of translucent as being lip gloss, or if you were to stain your deck versus paint it, or a glass of iced tea when you hold it up to the light. Those are all translucent objects that allow you to cover a surface, but you still see difference of tonality and depth to it, where an opaque color is very monochromatic, like there's not a lot of shift. So think of lipsticks, think of paint versus stain, and think of like a milkshake in a glass versus an iced tea. So depending on what your end result is, you can shift your developers to either get a translucent end result or an opaque end result. And we'll talk about our shifting technique and how that 30 volume comes into play. Hopefully that helped. Awesome. I'm going to show you just real quickly, and we've all applied color to gray hair before, but one product that I want to show you, since we're going through all things gray, is this little guy right here, and it's called our Brilliantine Gel. So Brilliantine Gel is from our Style line, and it's an amazing finishing product and shaping product. Great for updos and styling, has high shine, low hold. It's amazing if you need a barrier cream to use on your guest. I'm using it today on a mannequin because if you guys have ever worked on a mannequin before, they're not very forgiving if you get color on their skin. Keune doesn't stain the scalp, but we all know that scalp and skin are two different things. So sometimes during those drier winter months when the skin is more porous, sometimes they absorb the color when we apply it. Where if you grab Brilliantine Gel, it makes a great barrier cream that you can apply. And if you get it in the hair, it's fine because the color will still work through it. So little tip and trick for you guys if you're looking for something to protect the skin. So that was our Brilliantine Gel. When applying, I'm just going to section this top part out of the way. And I prepped her this week so that she's got some new growth, just like our clients are probably going to look like when we get back into the salon, except for probably a little bit more than what we're seeing right now. You can see, there we go. So in my bowl, I've got 5, Tint of Color 5 and Tint of 5.35. So the same formula that we were just talking about. And during that application, if you haven't used Tint of Color before, it goes on so easily that you really don't need to like press or work it in. It just kind of glides onto the hair and it sticks where you put it. So can move it really easily, but then again, like I still don't have to worry about like wiping it and pushing it away. So I like to border out my sectioning and apply. And then when we get into actually application, I want to keep my section size very thin. The coarser the hair, the more resistant the hair, the thinner the sections that I take. And I like to apply top and bottom. I'm going to try and move my arm out of the way here. So I apply to the top of this section. When I flip this, I also want to apply to the bottom. For me, that's just my extra security that I'm getting the coverage and the application that I need. And again,
can you move her? I'm sorry, can you move her a little closer?
I sure can. Sorry, I'm trying to keep her in there without getting my arm like right in the way.
Without coloring your arm.
I know, yeah. So top and bottom of each section. And again, the finer the hair, you can take bigger sections because the color moves and transfers like through the hair so well. You can take larger sections, but again, like just for added security, I like to keep them on that 1/4 of an inch thinner side. So then you would just keep applying. I like to work from top to bottom. And I usually, if it's a real client, I start my application in the most resistant spot. So if their most resistant spot is right in the crown, that's where I start my application. If their most resistant is in the temples, then I start my application there. The reason being is I get more time in that area for the alkalinity to start opening the hair and the color to start penetrating in. So time and application both play into the end result. So my timing can be extended for resistant gray. Typical time frame for processing a tint of color is 30 minutes, but if it's resistant gray hair, you can go up to 40 minutes to get coverage. If you're leaving it longer than that, you're kind of wasting your time. And I don't want to say wasting your time like you're not doing anything, but typically you should be able to get 100% gray coverage in 30 to 40 minutes. So if you're having to wait for an hour hoping that'll change it, probably not going to. The color is designed to stop working at that 30 to 40 minute time frame. So it's not going to get any darker. It's not going to really change your end result. What you'll need to change is your formula that you're using to get the gray coverage within your formula, not in your time frame.
Can you repeat your formula again, Amber?
I sure can. Right now I'm using Tinta Natural 5, equal parts with Tinta 5.35, which is a gold mahogany. I'm using that with equal parts of Tinta 20 volume. Good question. Thank you.
So I have a question. So,
yeah.
Okay, knowing that our clients are going to be coming back in the salon, you know, just like your beautiful model right there, she's got a lot of gray.
Yes.
What if you already know, based on past history, that the client is super resistant? Would you approach it in any different way than you are right now?
As far as the formula, or like would I tweak anything?
Like I'm thinking, like if you know, like around the hairline, they're super resistant. Would you maybe do a pre-staining or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, everything we talked about so far is for like normal hair up to resistant hair. But we all know resistant hair is a completely different like category all on its own. So yes, just to answer that question, I would approach it slightly differently. If all over the head is resistant, I would use our shifting technique. And what our shifting technique does, I've got a whole chart of like resistant like go-tos. And the first one is the UC series. We already talked about that one being geared towards resistant gray hair. So that would be my first option. If that's not enough, I can go into my shifting technique, and what that is, let me move that away for a minute, is I'm using more color than developer. And that developer then bumps up to 30 volume. So if I use the same formula that I've been, which to get 60 grams, it would be 30 grams of 5.35 and 30 grams of 5, that makes up my 60 grams of color. Now I would mix that with 40 grams of 30 volume. So notice the developer went up from what we usually recommend of 20 volume. The reason that is, and this goes back to when we were talking about translucent versus opaque, using 30 volume keeps the color the exact same as it usually looks if I didn't shift it. So using 30 volume in the shifting technique leaves the color the exact same as it did when I didn't shift it. I just get more pigment, more alkalinity, and in this case, I'm getting more warmth just because that's what my formula is calling for. So again, that more warmth, more pigment, more alkalinity is going to help with my end result and my coverage. So by using more color than active or developer, I'm increasing all of those things to get coverage that way. that's for all over the head. So if the whole head is resistant, definitely go to the shifting technique. If in the case that you're talking about, Jess, where maybe it's just a spot, maybe it's the temples, maybe it's the nape, there's different areas of the head that are just more resistant than others. And in that case, you can pre-soften, or what some people call pre-staining. And what that is taking a shade that's usually a half a level to a level lighter and warmer to put directly onto the hair to prep it for my formula. So what that looks like is, because we've been using 535, and actually I have this already mixed out for you, or not mixed, but just squirted in a bowl. I chose 6.3. So it's a level lighter than a 5, and it's warm. Our 0.3 is gold. So what I would do is apply this directly to the resistant spot, and then go mix my normal formula and apply it right over top of it. So you take this either from the tube or in the bowl and apply it directly to her hair. So say her nape was super resistant. I'm gonna use a brush product straight from the tube and apply it, and hopefully you'll be able to see, there we go, and apply it directly to the new growth or that most resistant spot. What that's gonna do is that alkalinity that's in there is gonna start to open up the cuticle faster, so that when I put on my normal formula, my timing starts then. So I've had an extra few minutes of alkalinity opening it, so that when I put my formulation on top of it, I can get that gray coverage still then in 30 minutes. So that's a great question, Jess. So pre-softening or pre-staining is meant for like troubleshooting areas, either like crown, temples, nape. Definitely something that you wouldn't be able to do throughout the whole head though. Thanks for the question?
Yeah.
Great. So after you did that, then I would still continue on with my normal formula that I've used here and keep applying it directly on top of that. So we've got UC series for resistant gray, shifting technique for resistant gray, pre-softening, which we just talked about. You can add in extra mixed colors. So a lot of times, like we just talked about, the hair will absorb that extra warmth. So think about it in the sense of like, if I have blonde hair and I'm taking it dark, I need to fill in that underlying pigment. Gray hair is kind of the same way if you think about it. There's no pigment there, so I have to put some contributing pigment into the formula for resistant gray hair. So I could use my 0/33. I could use 0/55, and people are super hesitant to put mahogany in where they don't want mahogany to be, but the hair will absorb it if it's truly resistant, leaving you with your ideal end result. So don't be afraid to either add in 0/33, 0/44, or 0/55. So extra mixed color. Timing, like we said, that can also be adjusted. Typically for gray coverage, it's 30 minutes, but we can go up to 40 for resistant gray hair. And then last but not least, the one that we talked about in the very beginning of the program, damp hair could also benefit you. It's not for everyone, and it's not going to probably solve all the problems. You still might have to use it in conjunction with something else. But again, moisture attracts moisture. So if I'm clarifying the hair, towel drying it, don't be afraid to towel dry it really well and apply Tinta onto that damp hair, because again, it's going to go into the hair quicker and hopefully give you more coverage on resistant gray hair. So I know we covered a lot of things, and hopefully some of them will help you with your gray formulations, either existing formulas or if you're new, then this is a lot of great information for you as well. Jess, do we have any questions?
No, we don't.
No?
No.
Wow, okay. That's great. After a gray service, I always, in any color or lightening service, definitely always recommend following up with the After Color shampoo and After Color balsam, especially with gray coverage. When we're taking those little 1/4 inch sections, we know that there's a lot of product on the hair and there's a lot of product on the scalp. So using the After Color shampoo and After Color balsam, which is the conditioner, this makes sure that all of that color residue is off of the hair and scalp. There's nothing worse than your client going home and like the first time that they wash their hair, they feel like their color's fading because they see the color rinsing out of their hair. It's not that it's fading off the hair, but there's residual pigment that's either left on the scalp or on the hair somewhere. This is going to remove that. So after color shampoo is going to remove residual pigment, close down the cuticle of the hair, return it back down to close to normal pH, which again, we're talking about all this alkalinity. We know alkalinity is raising it, or color is raising it, so we need something to bring it back down. So this is going to help regulate the pH of the hair as well, sealing everything in and closing everything down to really finish off your color service. And then you can always recommend what they would take home with them. So great. No other questions?
No, you
Awesome.
hit everything, girl.
Oh, I mean, initially when we had the great coverage conversation, I was like, man, an hour. Can we get in what we need to get in? And I try to make sure that we hit everything for you guys. So again, hopefully it was beneficial. Hopefully you guys walked away with a lot of great information. Can't wait to see all your pictures when you get back into the salon. So don't forget to tag Keune in America in your formulas, in your pictures, even in gray coverage. I know that we always see balayage and highlights and all of that. But for me, and I know for you guys, like gray coverage is the bread and butter in the salon. And the more we can share those formulas with each other, the more beneficial it'll be. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. Can't believe that hour went by so quickly, but I hope you enjoy your Wednesday. We can't wait to see you back. We won't be back on Friday, but we will definitely be back next Monday with Jessica Bartolucci, and next Wednesday with Gareth Palmer, sharing more things that'll benefit you behind the chair. So again, keep the ideas rolling, and can't wait to see you on Monday. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Bye, guys.